Hello, beloved!
Welcome to the Sacred Sister podcast,
where we normalize the magic and sacralize the mundane. In this podcast, we open up dialogue on metaphysical subjects, self-healing tools, expanding consciousness, and deepening awareness.
We're here to support you in co-creating a life full of healing, meaning, and magic.
If you are brand new here, welcome and hello.
We're so excited to have you here.
If you want to know more about what's come before, Season 1 was great for building foundations on spiritual practices. Season 2, we focused on relationships, and now we're in Season 3.
The season of the Empress, where we open deep dialogue with conscious entrepreneurs who are spearheading their sacred mission.
We have an amazing lineup this season, so make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already. Now a bit about us. I'm your host, Britt, a self-study entrepreneur, personal transformation coach, and content creator. I'm prompting you to come to know the self more fully, because when we can acknowledge who we are as unique individuals, our potential to experience life gets a whole lot more interesting.
And I'm your host, Hannah, a life beyond the veil coach, priestess, and astrologist. And I guide you to unleash your source powers, leverage your inner blueprint, and sync with life's algorithm to manifest your wildest dreams. Because hey, we're multidimensional beings playing this game of life. Let's make it fun and magical.
We are so grateful that you're here. And together,
we're here to serve as your
Sacred Sister. Let's dive in. Hello, sacred beings! Welcome to another episode of Sacred Sister Podcast. This is Britt, and I am so excited about today's episode that I'm honestly gonna do a micro introduction because this episode interview does go on a bit longer. In Season 3, we've been keeping the interviews around an hour, maybe just over an hour. This one is just over 90 minutes, and I want to get straight to it because it is fire. Every single minute, every question, every answer, every insight, every story is so juicy and packed full of wisdom and just, such fresh perspective. We're sitting down with Corinne Loperfido today. We featured her as the first official guest on Sacred Sister Podcast. If you're interested to go back to Season 2, we did the sexual liberation episode. That interview is awesome too, but we're switching the gears a little bit and focusing on a different avenue of Corinne's life, of her facilitation, of her leadership. Corinne Loperfido is a true Renaissance woman who has always been driven to break boundaries and transcend social norms. Through costume design and wearable art, radically inclusive events, and one-on-one services as a decluttering doula, her goal is to help people overcome familial and societal guilt and shame so that they can live a life of empowered self-expression. Corinne believes in the importance of reclaiming our personal power through body literacy, self-love, minimalism, and anti-consumerism. So we're diving into minimalism for maximalists in this episode, focusing in the realm of reusing items, repurposing, recycling, and repeating this process. Growing our conscious awareness so that we understand more fully the trash that we generate. And we really start getting deep with ourselves and asking, do I need this thing in my life? What is it that's already in my life? Is it valuable to me? And if it's not any longer, what are my options as far as passing it along to someone who is going to really appreciate it? We're going to be covering so many different topics today with this decluttering doula. I love that title. She's a total powerhouse. We have a lot of links and offerings of Corinne's and some of the resources that you're going to hear in this episode. Everything is listed down below. We thank you so much for your listenership and your support. If you are feeling that Sacred Sister is offering some benefit to your life and truly a magical little gem of a nugget in your back pocket, we invite you to consider leaving us a rating, leaving us a review. If you're looking for ways to support Sacred Sister Podcast, these are incredible ways to do it. It increases our searchability so that more sacred beings just like yourself can find this podcast more easily. We also encourage you to break new boundaries in your own life by sharing these podcast episodes with friends, family, soul family. and bridge that connection with people that you love on topics that you're passionate about. So we invite you to sit back, relax, and we're going to hop over into Hannah's astrology segment right now before the interview. Thank you so much, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
Hello, my friends. This is Hannah, and this is the astrology segment, and we're going to be diving into the inner blueprint of Corinne Loperfido. I actually already did a blueprint reading for her in our second episode of the second season. That was the very first astrology report that I did on Sacred Sister podcast. So this is very special, and we're so happy to have her back. This time, our topic is very different. Last time we talked about sexual liberation, and I highly recommend checking that episode out. And this time we're going to really focus on the beautiful constellations that she has in her chart. And one of them is a kite, or as one of my students loves to say, a diamond, which I absolutely love. A diamond is a grand trine together with a small talent triangle. So that happens when we have 3 planets that are each trine to each other, and then we have 1 planet that is sextile to 2 of them. Basically, it looks like a big diamond in the chart. And what it does is it helps us to really manifest our talents in the greatest way possible. So whatever that 1 planet is that is sextile to the 2 other planets, that's the planet that is the manifester, that is the one that puts things into motion. Whenever we have a trine in our chart, a grand trine, that shows a grand talent of ours. It shows something that easily flows for us and that feels good and authentic. But sometimes it can happen that when we have a grand trine and we don't have a specific planet that is triggering or activating the trine, it may feel like that it just comes so easy to us that we're not even doing anything in that regard, or we're not fully expressing it. And sometimes it can help when someone comes into our lives that is activating that grand trine, and then suddenly we can really bring out our big talent. But when we have a diamond or a kite constellation like Corinne does, that's when that activator is in her chart throughout her whole life. So it makes it easier to manifest her grand talent into reality. So let's look into that kite of hers, because that's very interesting how it all comes together. We have the Sun, Venus, and Mars all conjunct in her 11th house in Virgo. So with Virgo, it's the archetype of the helper, the sage, the organizer, right? She calls herself a decluttering doula. So we have this talent for organization in the 11th house, which is the house of community, doing something that's good for the world, that's good for all, right? Like when we talk about minimalism, that is something that's good for the earth, that's good for our society, that's an improvement of the structures and systems that have been in place. And it's a rebellion. It's literally a rebellion and a revolution of how we were supposed to live. So we see the Sun conjunct Venus and Mars in Virgo. This is also her ability to connect what brings her joy, which is her sun sign, together with activism, which is represented by Mars, and combined with art, which is represented by Venus. And then those are connected to Jupiter in the 7th house. And Jupiter is the lucky planet, the planet of expansion, blessings, and the 7th house is the house of relationships. So it's easy for Corinne to get to know people, to meet people, and to receive support from others. And that really helps her with her art projects as well, because she attracts the right people to her that are expanding her mind and are helping her in her vision. And then the trine also connects with Neptune in the 3rd house. Neptune being in Capricorn, it's about the illusions of our current physical structure that we're living in, the matrix, so to speak, the illusion of the reality of the systems, the shadow side of it. And the Neptune part also brings in this deep acceptance of it at the same time, and ideally this unconditional love towards people from all different areas, knowing that we all have shadows and we're not perfect. Nobody is, and everybody has to start somewhere on this journey. So this Neptune in the 3rd house gives her that ability to communicate in a way that is compassionate and that people can relate to. And ideally, she connects all of those 3 together. That activates her grand trine. And then we have Pluto in the 1st house, and I just love it so much. Pluto is the planet of transformation. It also rules her moon, which is in Scorpio, also in the 1st house. I talk about that more in the 2.2 episode. What Pluto stands for is the stuff that we don't want to look at, the stuff that we throw out, the stuff that we detach from, literally our trash and waste. And that actually activates her grand trine that we just talked about. So bringing in the trash aspect, the things that other people want to just get rid of, taking that in, combining it with her art, with her activism, with what brings her joy, bringing in the people here that are expanding her and are helping her, and at the same time creating a message to others that it's okay to start wherever you are. You don't have to be perfect in this, but even doing whatever you can will help on this journey of minimalism, and it will better the world. And so this is literally Corinne's diamond in her inner blueprint. I mean, she created this beautiful art piece called the Trash Temple. So she literally used that Pluto to activate her grand trine of beautiful talent of how to bring activism, art, and the joy of living all together. So all in all, Corinne is a rebellious artist, creator, and activist who is here to help in the evolution of humanity by transforming the way we connect with the physical world. So this was the inner blueprint of Corinne. And if you are interested in finding out more about your own inner blueprint and energetic DNA, I invite you to go to my website, hannahchristensen.com. That's where you can book a inner blueprint reading for yourself, for your business, or your relationship. And if you use the code SACREDSIS, you get 15% off. So I'm looking forward to talking to you. And for now, let's dive into the interview. Enjoy.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Thank you guys all so much for being here today for this conversation. And before we begin, I just want to let people know we're going to be talking about getting rid of stuff and letting go and getting back in right relationship with the earth. And so not really like a guided meditation, but just if we can just take a couple of breaths together as we prepare to face these topics, which can feel really overwhelming for people. Getting rid of stuff and the history and all the energy that's carried with the things that we have. It's a lot, and it's a lot to let go of, and it's, but now is the time. And we're here locked in our houses. We're going to be locked in our houses for a little bit longer. So let us use this time to really evaluate. If you haven't already cleaned your house 50 times, we're going to do it now. But I just want people to really be present with what really matters to them now that we've had a few months to contemplate our lives and what we're doing and the path that we're on and changing things up. Let's think about the objects. That's what we're going to talk about today, that we have in our home, that we have in our life, and really be grateful for what we have. And then also be thinking about, what am I ready to let go of, and where can it go so that these objects can serve their highest good out in the world. So first, we're going to take a breath, and I want you to think about, your 5 most prized possessions. So breathe in and think about your favorite few things. And just be grateful that you have these things that support you and that are there for you. And then with the next breath, you're going to think about 5 of the biggest things in your house that you're like, I know I need to get rid of this. I know this needs a new home. And I'm beginning the mental process, at least, of being like, okay, after this, I'm going to think about where I might be able to get rid of them. So, okay, 5 least favorite things or things you're ready to part with. And for people, it might be the stuff in the garage. It might be a collection you've been holding on to, or a couch, you need to get rid of. Like, whatever these things are, just keep in mind that just because you have something doesn't mean that you need to keep it forever. And so just be grateful for what you have and what you've been given, and be ready to step into a new version of yourself as we continue to evolve together through this quarantine experience, and really being home a lot and keeping our home as our sanctuary, because it's pretty much the only place we get to go right now. So thank you guys so much for this opportunity to talk to people, and I'm excited to get into the details.
Oh my gosh. Hello, Corinne, and welcome. We want to say a really big, we're just so excited to have you on. You're one of the only people that we've had on twice to the podcast. So welcome back.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
So hi to all of our audience members from whatever corner that you're tuning into in the globe. Wow. I mean, Hannah, how was that for you? What kind of stuff popped up for you? I know it was when you said 5 things, I was like, oh no, I can't even think of 5 things. I thought of my guitar and this shirt that I'm wearing that I repurposed. And it's so interesting, especially when you said the least favorite things. I was like, no, I hate thinking about my least favorite things that I want to get rid of. It's so interesting how hard it can be to think about those things.
You know what's so funny is I am preparing to take a flight tomorrow and go back to the US. I've been visiting my family here in Germany, and I kind of went for a little scare today because I forgot where I placed the passports of me and my daughter. And I got scared because I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most important thing in the whole world at this point, because it would be an absolute catastrophe if I didn't find my passports. And that really, when you said that, Corinne, what are your most important and most loved possessions? I have my passports in there. I'm like, my passport, my laptop, my phone, my money wallet, really just the basic things of survival in this world that we are living in right now, and at least in this matrix modern society. So it really brought it down to okay, what's really important? Anything else can be replaced, but not having a passport in a foreign, not in foreign country, but even for Emma,
right,
she has an American passport. I'm like, oh no.
Oh, brings you down to the simplicity of things.
Yeah, and in this time where, I split my time between the South and the West Coast in America, and right now New Orleans is getting ready for hurricanes and California is on fire. And so I think that those ideas, like knowing what is most important to you and knowing what is least important to you, is really important, especially as we all run the risk of becoming climate refugees as things change and, the planet is having all these different environmental disasters come up. So yeah, it feels extra heightened for me because both of the places where I live are like on the verge of being destroyed or already are destroyed. And so yeah, it's a good practice to be in touch with like what really matters to you in the physical plane. Of course, your family and friends and all this matters, but we're talking about stuff today. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it seems like such a good time to really tap into this conversation right now because of the relevancy of all the natural disasters that are occurring around us. And even if we're not physically in those states that are going to be impacted, it's pretty likely that we know someone who's being affected. We can tap in instantaneously on social media now to witness a lot of what people are going through. And for me, it's just this really not nice, but it's this wild time of inviting in these thoughts and really questioning what is of most value and what I am blessed with and grateful for that I've, collected over the years, and also the things that I might just be hoarding for energetic reasons like you were talking about, and just taking all of that into perspective, because there are people that are literally having to grab things that are being evacuated in California from the fires, and they don't know if they're going to have any of the rest of their stuff. And what I've been reading in a lot of their captions is just that, like, when they have that 10 minutes to grab stuff before being evacuated, like nothing matters anymore. People are grabbing seeds. People are grabbing, things that are going to help them rebuild in the future. And it just puts a lot into perspective.
Yeah, and something I will say as people that are not living in zones that are currently under risk of, being evacuated, is that I'm hoping that this episode and at this moment, because it's going to come out right as soon as we film it, so it's a very timely release of this, is that as people are going through their stuff, and I have a whole online class called Minimalism for Maximalists. It's on my Patreon. All that will be linked in the description, where I help people go through room by room in their house and reevaluate, where the materials for this thing coming from. Is this like an ethical and sustainable thing that I'm participating in? And then for all the things you already have, like, do I want this? And if I don't want it, what is the ethical way to get rid of it? And so for anyone that's about to embark or has already kind of been on their journey of getting rid of stuff, I really advise people to not take things to the thrift store unless they absolutely have tried all other options. And right now, what I'm going to do after I post everything on my sale, whatever's left over and things that people don't buy, I'm going to repost all of that and be like, hey, this stuff is all free to people of color, specifically people that have been displaced or had their things ruined because of this fire or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, if you are in need of stuff, I want to preference those people that have the least access, and then I can just donate it directly to people instead of giving it to the thrift store. And I have been in a house fire before where I was in a house and it burnt down and I managed to escape, but I lost a lot of my stuff. And we went to the thrift store and I called the Red Cross or the Salvation Army. I don't know. It was a long time ago, but I made a bunch of calls to different organizations and we were able to get a bunch of free stuff at the thrift store because we were in a house fire. And so there are resources for that kind of stuff, but also just through posting on Instagram for myself anyway, and other people can do this too, even if they don't have as big of a following. If you want to give something away, see if you can give it away directly to someone who's like, hey, I really want that. And because my whole thing is just trying to cut out the middleman as much as possible, the middleman being money. And so it's like, okay, your house got destroyed. You need stuff. I have stuff that I don't want anymore. I could just dump it all at the thrift store and hope for the best, even though I know a lot of it will probably end up in the landfill or not out on the floor. Or I could be like, hey, who wants this stuff specifically? And then get it directly in the hands of people who actually need it And then it doesn't need to go to the thrift store. It doesn't need to be any money transaction. It can just go directly to someone that's going to appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked a little bit about your background, where you said you were in a fire before and it happened for you. Was that kind of the time where you started thinking more of the minimalistic lifestyle, or you were already in the minimalistic lifestyle, or how did it start for you? What is your story?
Well, the fire was many years ago, and definitely, I mean, anyone that's been in a fire or a flood or any kind of like situation where they had to like abandon their stuff or it got destroyed can understand like that it makes it really clear what you care about and what you don't care about, because it was like, yeah, we were in the house. It was filling with smoke. I sat up. Thank God someone woke up and was like, hey, everybody, the house is on fire. Get out. Because I would have died of asphyxiation in my sleep, not knowing that there was a fire. It was the middle of the night. And so I got up and I was all woozy and I could barely think. And I was like drunk on smoke inhalation. And I was like, okay, this is it. What do I grab? And I grabbed a few things, and then everything else, you're just like, you're so in shock and all that you just don't even have time to think about it. And I could have gone in and probably done another trip. But also in that moment when you're like, the house is literally getting engulfed in flames, am I going to go in and grab my stuff? You know what I mean? And so those moments really make things clear. But no, that was long before my journey into minimalism. And it wasn't like my house where I lived. I was just traveling, but I did have a lot of stuff in there, but it wasn't like everything I owned. You know, that's a whole different thing when you lose all your childhood photographs and like your passport and all these kind of things. And so I'm grateful that wasn't the situation for any of us in that house, that we were like full-time living there, had everything in there. But the journey for me really began at the beginning of 2018 when I did this challenge. There's a movie called The Clean Bin Project, and I think it came out in like 2011. It's just a little like home documentary kind of vibe of a couple. And they were like, we're going to do a challenge where we try not to buy anything or create any trash for a year. And so I saw this movie when I was getting ready to do the first zero waste party in January 2018. I was doing all this research of all these movies to, put as references in the zine on the resources page. And so that was one of the movies I watched, and I was like, wow, that sounds really fun. Like, I feel like I would learn a lot, and that would be a good challenge to like repattern all the things I need to deal with, because my parents are totally hoarder, not like piles of magazines that you have to step over, but like kind of almost, they have a really hard time. And a lot of people do. It's a huge problem in this contemporary capitalist society. And so just growing up with like insane amounts of stuff everywhere, and like two people that just like can't say no and like keep collecting stuff, I, of course, was like cooked in the juices of that placenta and like turned out to be this person. And so I grew up going to antique stores and like estate sales and finding things on the side of the road. And that's been great for me. But also, like, I also had a hard time saying no when I see a cool thing and it's cheap. I'm like, I want this. And so in the process of being like, okay, not creating any trash, that's where I got really deep into zero waste and rethinking the way that I buy things, specifically like food and clothes and anything that comes in packaging. And then the not creating trash, that was the zero waste thing. And the not buying anything thing was a way for me to stop the flow of more coming in, because it's like there's more and more coming in. You only have so much space. As young people, I feel like a lot of us move a lot. And for me, I probably moved 14 or 15 times in my life, just, moving cities, moving apartments, getting in and out of relationships, like all different reasons why I've moved a lot. But it's a lot of stuff that you have to move when you accumulate, over the years. And so I'm like, okay, I think I was like 30 at the time. And I was like, okay, I'm just starting a new decade of my life, looking at my parents who are like obviously twice as old as me. I mean, they have a crazy amount of stuff and they own their house. So they're not like leaving, having to move. So it's like, why not keep accumulating it? Why not just fill the room up? Who cares? Mm-hmm. And I just kind of saw that future and I was like, I'm going to put the brakes on and I'm going to reevaluate. So that now we're almost 3 years into this where I stopped accumulating stuff. And so for that year, I didn't really buy much at all. Like I bought a van, but I sold my car. And I needed a couple things as I transitioned out of like living in a house full time to like living in a van part time and then like subletting part time. So that kind of got me going on this thing. And now, 2.5 years later, I'm finally like, okay, I'm actually ready to get rid of my storage unit. I'm ready to like let go of most of this stuff. And yeah, when I think about it, that's probably like $4,000 over 2 years, 2.5 years that I paid of this storage unit. Like I could have bought my own shipping container. I could have bought a bus. I could have bought all these things to have like permanent storage, and I could have kept all this stuff. You know what I mean? And so ultimately, I just knew it was time to like let things go and clear space for new things. And that's also why I'm sharing my journey on Instagram with it, because, I teach this class about zero waste and minimalism. And now everyone's seeing like, wow, this lady had a lot of stuff in her storage unit. And it's like, yeah, like the reason I teach these classes is because I'm in it too. Like, I'm not just like, oh, I have it all figured out. And like, here's everything. I'm perfect. I'm just like, yo, this is what I've learned. This is what I'm integrating. This is what's helping me. And maybe that can help you with your journey, because everyone has different factors, whether they create a lot of trash, whether they buy a lot of stuff. We're all mixed up in this world. And so I'm just trying to give people resources to like deal with it.
I've gotten goosebumps like 3 times, like full body goosebumps. And that doesn't happen to me that often since talking to you. But I'm just so grateful. We talked about this in the last episode too, but I'm just so grateful that you so fully embody the unique energy that you're here to like spray out into the world. Because I love that you mentioned your not auctions, but like your little, sales.
My storage unit yard sale.
Storage unit yard sale. Yes. I've been watching it for the last couple days, and I have been like laughing my ass off watching your little Instagram story slides, not only from the outfits that you're putting together, like literally just piecing a lot of your stuff together, which I think we're going to talk about in the repurposing here in a minute, but like, it's just so important. Exactly what you just said, that you're not this perfect person and you don't have it all figured out, and you're sharing this because you're in it. And I think that just breaks down this big perfectionism sort of pedestal thinking that so many people have, that, you could be heralded as like, oh my God, she's like the expert and I'll never be as good at minimalism and zero waste living as her. And it's just like, you break all that down and you're just like, no, like, let's just, I see you, you see me, like, let's just do the thing. Like, here's my information, here's the education. You're just this wellspring of knowledge, and you're so like ready to like blast it at whoever is like down to listen. I love it.
Yeah, if you're down to listen, if it helps you, then great. If you think, oh, well, look at all the stuff she has, what does she know about minimalism, Well, it's like, well, then, hey, if you're not getting anything on it, you don't have to. But I think that just for being honest with people, like, this is where I'm at. This is my journey. The reason I know about this stuff is because I've walked through it. And that's why I call my class Minimalism for Maximalists. Yeah. Because my whole life, I grew up in a maximalist household. My art aesthetic is very like busy and patterns and maximal. But what I've realized is that you can have a visual aesthetic maximalist thing, but you don't have to own a ton of possessions that are like bogging you down. That's why I started this thing with being like, let's start by getting clear about what really matters to us and what really doesn't matter to us. Because then you kind of create the two ends of the spectrum. Like, very valuable. If it burned down in the fire, I wouldn't even fucking remember I had it. And then everything else falls in that spectrum in between. And so then you can kind of use that scale to be like, okay, this item, if this item were to burn in a fire, would I replace it? Would I bother to replace it? If your computer burns down, of course, the first thing you're going to do is buy a new computer. If the basketball supplies from high school that you have never looked at in 15 years burned down? Are you going to be like, oh, well, you know what? It's probably for the best. So just having that kind of awareness about what value is to you, because there's all different kinds of value. There's money that you paid, monetary value. Oh man, like I paid $400 for this thing. I don't want to just give it away. Or if it's sentimental value, you're like, oh, this thing, someone gave it to me. Like, I don't really want it, but it means a lot to me. You know, everyone has a different journey with it. And so that's why it's such a personal thing. And there is no right or wrong answer. There's just like tips, because different things are going to work for different people.
Yes, I love that. And there's such a cliche of minimalism is that it's all bare white walls and just a few pieces and super simple. And it can be super intimidating seeing that. And for people that like, that's not my style. I don't like that way of living. But what would be your personal definition of minimalism?
Minimalism for me is like having the things that you need and use often that are exactly the thing that you like. Because as I was saying, everyone has different needs. Some people don't need very much clothes because fashion is like the least of their concerns, but they have like a huge shed of garden tools. And for some people, they don't have a bunch of like, I don't know, it's so personal and it's so different, but I think that it's not a visual aesthetic to me, minimalism. I hear what you're saying, and a lot of people feel that way, and that's why I felt called to teach my class, because I was like, oh, whatever. There's already people out there talking about zero waste and minimalism. And my friend was like, no. Like, you're going to have a different perspective because your flavor is so different that other people who, like you're saying, are going to be like, oh, minimalism is so intimidating. It's all the white walls. I'm like, dude, fuck white walls. I don't want that. That's not my idea of minimalism. I would rather like have a bunch of posters and art up everywhere. But if all those posters and art fold down into like one little binder, you know, or like one little container of all that stuff, well, then that's not actually like volume. So for me, minimalism is more about volume and getting the maximum use out of the things you do have. And one thing that I've been going through just with the storage unit sale and trying to figure out what to keep and what to get rid of is that for clothes, I'll just start with that. There's certain articles of clothing that you have. I mean, I live in a van half the year, and now I just bought a school bus, and I'm going to be living on a school bus. So I have like 240 square feet for everything I own. And so it's like, okay, I love this dress, but when I fold it up, it's like the size of a pillow. How often do I wear this dress? If I wear this dress, if it's like my number one favorite winter thing, I wear it all the time. And I'm like, who cares if it's huge? I wear it constantly. Then the value is worth the size. But if I'm like, oh, I only wear this thing a couple times a year, but it takes up half of one of my drawers, am I really getting that much value for the real estate that it's taking up? And so for me, not only is it like having fewer things, but it's like the size of the things, because I live in small spaces. And so value has a different, you know, hierarchy in my world because of the square footage that I'm dealing with. And so, yeah, that's just a tip for people when they're like, oh, I really want all my clothes to fit in this one dresser. And like, I don't want to have like boxes of stuff like spilling out or a bunch of like seasonal clothes hidden under my bed. It's like, okay, start with your favorite things, pull those out and be like, these are my ultimate favorite things. I wear these. Then, like I said, then identify your 5 least favorite things if we're talking about clothes. And then as you're looking at the spectrum of things in between, be like, how big is this? How much room does it take up? And do I wear it enough? Is it even worth keeping? Or is it like time for me to let it go? Because there's someone out there that are like, this would be my favorite thing I would wear all the time, and it's worth the amount of space.
Yes. And I love that there's the saying, someone's trash is someone else's treasure.
Or just something that you're like, this isn't my favorite thing. Like, only keep your favorite things. Everything that you have should be 10 out of 10. Great. If you're like, this is a 3 out of 10. It's like, well, why do you have it? You're just going to pick the thing that's 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. So why even bother keeping any of the stuff that's not a 10 out of 10? Because you're always going to pick that thing that you like. And a statistic that I heard one time was that we wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. So that means that a very small fraction of what we have, we wear the same thing every day. As soon as it's clean out of the washing machine, bam, we put it back on. And so think about that other 80% of clothes that you'd only wear 20% of the time. Is it worth it? And how much money are you paying to have a bigger apartment so you can store all this stuff? Do you really need a walk-in closet, or could you have a smaller space? And so when people kind of zoom out and think about the money that we pay, and then also the resources that it takes, people living in these big houses with multiple closets and all this stuff, you know what? It takes energy to heat and cool those kind of places. It costs a lot more in mortgage. It costs a lot more in property taxes. Do you really need all that? Because that money could be used to have a garden, or I don't know, maybe help some other people that don't have any house at all. And so I'm really calling for people to reevaluate what their priorities are, because the distribution of resources is so fucked in this world that there's no reason for, and I'm speaking to like, you know, typically white middle-class Americans on this particular note, but it applies to everybody. If you have things that you don't love and use, why are you keeping them? Because it's hurting you, because you have to deal with it, and it's preventing other people who are like, wow, I wish I had a basketball, and you're like, great, I literally don't want this. And so everyone wins when you redistribute.
I'm having such a visceral, like, felt experience in my body. I can tell that stuff wants to happen in me that I might not feel like I'm ready for. I just thought about this closet in my guest bedroom / office that I have, and I don't look at these clothes anymore. And half of me is like, oh, you can go and drop them off at Goodwill anytime. And I've always been waiting to just do that one day. But then now I'm really curious to talk to you about that, because you said use a thrift store as a last resort. And I understand about reaching out to your local community or giving them to friends or reaching out on your social media community. But I'm really curious to know, you said something about how most of a lot of the clothes at thrift stores end up in landfills anyway. And I'm curious if you can open up on that process a little more for us, because I was completely unaware of that. Usually donating to Goodwill is like a high thing on my priority list. I think it's a good thing. So I'm just super curious to learn about that.
So basically, the amount of consumption that we participate in this country is so vast and so rapid that there's no way that the thrift store could possibly put out on the floor the volume of donations. I'm sure most people have been to a thrift store, and sometimes there's even a line to donate your items because there's so many people unloading trash bags and trash bags of things to donate. Sometimes there are things that are broken. Sometimes there are things that are stained. And there's just so much good quality stuff getting donated that if your thing is not in perfect shape, it's going to get thrown away. Because why would they put things that have rips and stains or need a button sewn on when they have an endless amount of amazing brand new clothes, things with tags on them? And so the reason, and then what happens after that? So let's say, you know, that you donate something to the thrift store, it may or may not go out onto the floor. Even after it goes onto the floor, it may or may not get sold. Let's assume that it doesn't get sold. Well, then what? That's why thrift stores have different colored tags, because they know, okay, blue just came out. In 2 weeks, if there's any blue tags, they're getting pulled off the floor because they've been sitting there for 2 weeks and we got to get new stuff in there. So the color, that's why things get discounted at thrift stores by the color of the tag, because they're like, okay, it's been 2 weeks. No one's bought this thing. Now it's 50% off. I want to get this out. I got to make room because there's so much new inventory. They can't even keep up with that. And so let's say that your thing, either it wasn't good enough to get put on the floor or it doesn't sell. Okay, well, now what? It's going to either get sent to the landfill or it's going to get bailed up and sent to third world countries where they're either going to like drop it off from an airplane in the water and people are going to swim out into the water and try and like get this stuff. And the clothes, the polyester clothes, they're sinking to the bottom of the ground, poisoning the water in these areas. Or they're like selling these clothes on the black market, which destroys the textile industry for these local places. I hate the phrase third world country, but I'll just say other places that are not America, you know, the white patriarchy deems as third world because they don't operate under these bullshit imperialist principles. But basically, when you donate all your stupid ass fucking I did a 5K run on January 5th, 2003 t-shirt that you never needed or wanted or are ever going to wear again, that's going to end up in Kenya and someone's going to buy it for 10 cents. And you know what they're not going to buy? A local made like tribal community oriented like textile that is by their people for their people, because they can't afford that. They're like, oh, well, I could buy this Nike shirt for 10 cents. And so it's like, I think that when we're talking about the fashion industry, and that's just clothes, you know, like all the other stuff, anything broken, anything damaged, landfill, because they don't have time to deal with it. There are just dumpsters behind thrift stores that are full of shit. That's where I got a lot of the stuff for my trash temple installation, was thrift store dumpsters, because they already threw it out. And I'm just like, this is great for my art project and other things. Like there's so much that gets thrown in the dumpster that's totally useful. And so, yeah, I that's why I think that like, for me, doing the sale is like, yes, I need to make money because I spent money on this stuff and I would like to just get my money back. But even equal to that is like, I want to make sure that someone wants it because I bought it and now it's my responsibility. And so I'm not just going to pass it off on the thrift store and be like, oh, not my problem. Even though a lot of it came from the thrift store, I'm still just like, I'm going to work my damnedest to find people that are excited about it, because that is the only way to keep it out of the landfill for longer. Because ultimately it's all going in the landfill. Everything, look around you, everything's going in the landfill. Unless it's biodegradable and you make sure that it gets into the compost. How many things do we have in this contemporary world that are compostable? Not many. So that's also part of why I'm changing my lifestyle, because I'm just like, I don't even want all this plastic stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't want it in my life. But it's a slow process. And so like transitioning all the polyester out of my wardrobe and only having cotton or hemp or silk or whatever kind of stuff, it's a long process. And so I'm not going to be like, I'm throwing out everything now. I'm just like, okay, chapter by chapter, season by season, I'm going to continue to get rid of stuff as I emotionally can deal with it, as I can logistically deal with it. And it's like, I can't get rid of all my winter jackets if I don't have a winter jacket. And so it's just being patient with yourself as the waves of revelation come to you. And as you like find the things that are the thing you want, that are a 10 out of 10, then it makes getting rid of the other things much easier, because you're like, I know I'm going to wear my 10 out of 10 winter coat. I don't need all these other winter coats. So yes, that's the harsh reality about the thrift store.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have a question about that, because what would you do with things that are stained and that are ripped? What do you do with those kind of clothes?
So as far as like clothes that are just too worn out to go to the thrift store that anyone would want, this is something that I don't necessarily have the answer for, but I know that there are, you could look up textile, what's it called? They basically like places that like take textiles, shred it up, and then use it to like fill beds or pillows or dog beds or like stuff like that, because
cool.
It's still fiber and it's still useful. And so that's one of the things too in the trash temple installation I just did at Meow Wolf, is that there's a big bench, a big throne, and on that bench I saved a bunch of old jeans from the thrift store and like whatever. My mom had a bunch of old jeans that she helped me with. And then for years I've been saving all my fabric scraps from making costumes. And so I had bags and bags of like little pieces of fabric that were like so small, but I was like, eventually I'm going to do something with this. And then I was like, great, this is my moment. And so there's someone making it. I'm not making it because I'm not a professional upholsterer, but someone's taking all these old jeans, cutting out the pockets and all that stuff. They're going to cut up all the parts of the jeans that they can't use, put that all in the stuffing, and then all my old fabric scraps, and then a bunch of other clothes, because the cushion was bigger than I had anticipated, and I didn't have enough fabric scraps. So I went to a thrift store, and I was like, hey, and you have to go to a small thrift store, because the big places like Goodwill, they don't care about redistribution. They're just like, whatever, nope, that's our policy, go away. So I went to a small local thrift store, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this art project. I'm looking for a bunch of clothes that are like, that people donated that are like too crappy for you to put out on the floor. Do you have any clothes like that? And she was like, oh yeah, that box over there, you can have whatever you want. So these clothes that someone donated to the thrift store, I went and I was like, hey, I know that you have this stuff. Can I please have it? And she's happy. That's going to keep it out of the landfill. I just moved a bunch of stuff away that she doesn't want to deal with. And then I didn't have to go to Michael's and buy a bunch of new foam to fill the cushion. I was like, I know there's stuff out there that's going to go in the landfill. why would I buy something new when I know that there's materials? So as far as where to donate that stuff, I would look up TerraCycle, TERRA cycle. They have a lot of resources for redistribution. And then, I would just look up your area, type in textile recycling in your area, and then see if there's a place where you could bring it. But that's something that I need to learn more about, because we all have like period stained underwear and like holes in our socks, and it's like, what do I do with this thing? So
yes, I love that.
That's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating. And I feel like this should be something that actually every thrift store should be partnering up with. And instead of throwing all these clothes into the landfill, just giving it to a textile recycling company.
They might do that. They could also like give it to homeless people. They could give it to people. They don't have to throw all these things away, but that's all. It's kind of like, have you guys heard of the like new car graveyards?
No.
So you can look this up. Just Google new car graveyard, aerial view or whatever. And there are places on this earth where there are just brand new cars that are parked bumper to bumper for miles that didn't get sold. But they can't let people know that, or else they won't buy the next year's model. So they just park these cars on these empty lots. They're all over the world, and they just rot. Brand new cars. They could be giving these cars, they could be donating them, but that is not going to look good for it, because then people are like, oh wait, I'm not going to buy this new car because I know that if I wait at the end of the year, then I can like get a free car. It's the same reason why restaurants throw out food that's perfectly good instead of giving it to homeless people, because they don't want homeless people knocking on their door saying, hey, I know you're going to have free food at the end of the night. And so it's like supply and demand is just complete bullshit, and it's all fabricated, and all these prices and all this stuff is all just a complete consumerist farce to get us to buy shit at top dollar. They don't care about the environment. They don't even care about what they're making. They're willing to put all their company's energy and people's time and energy to make these cars and then let them rot because they don't want to. They don't want to fuck with the market value of their thing.
That is insane.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, as someone who is a leader, a teacher, a facilitator of, helping people gain awareness over these aspects of the human experience, how do you make peace with this? These are the kind of factoids that enter my realm, and I very easily start feeling super overwhelmed because I'm just like, the whole planet could be changed. Everything could be different. All the thrown away food, the cars, the clothes, and especially in the fast fashion industry too, the things that go out of trend, go out of style, and what happens to the Forever 21s that are literally filled to the brim. Here in Las Vegas, we have a Macy's sized 2-story Forever 21. It might already be closed down, but it's just massive, department sized fast fashion. It's like
all polyester.
Yeah, how do you do it? Trash, garbage clothes.
I mean, for me, yes, of course, it's overwhelming. You're like, wow, humans fucking suck. This is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I'm just one little insignificant grain of sand. But when I choose to feel not insignificant, and I'm like, well, I'm one person with a big fat mouth who can tell other people that these things exist. And I can be like, hey, you have a choice, actually. Do you want to keep buying all this stuff? Do you want to keep fueling these industries by participating in them? Or do you want to say, fuck that, I'm going to find other ways to do it. I'm going to find other ways to get things. I'm going to find other ways to give things. And I'm not going to feed that engine. Because the only reason the engine exists is because we put gas in it every time we buy something. And so it's like, if people stop buying all these consumer products, they're not going to keep making them because they're not going to be profitable. But that takes a massive cultural shift to get people to realize that what they own is not who they are, and that there are consequences to their shopping habits. And so it's like, for me with food, I'm like, okay, let me try and support small independent co-op grocery stores that are dealing with local farmers. Let me go to the farmer's market. Let me deal with the farmer directly when I can. And when I'm eating at a restaurant, let me see if I can find a restaurant that is dealing in local organic produce. Like, let me make relationships with the places that I'm eating at and get to understand where they're sourcing their stuff from, because we all have to eat and we all have to get from point A to point B. And whether you're driving a car, a motorcycle, a scooter, or a bicycle, or taking public transit, all that is going to end up in the landfill. All the materials, you know, oh, you got a flat tire on your bike, landfill, you know? So it's like, it's kind of inevitable at this point. And a friend of mine always jokes about how overwhelmed he feels by this. And he's like, I just need to go be naked in a cave. That's the only way to be pure, is just to be naked in a cave. And I'm like, I mean, I hear you, but there is a spectrum between naked in a cave and Jeff Bezos. And it's like, I'm way more over like naked in a cave for sure. But I'm also just like, you know what? I need my van. I need to be able to get around. I'm always moving large quantities of stuff. I'm sleeping in my van. Like, I'm completely dependent on that thing to be able to live and function. And so, but I bought a used van instead of a new van. And I, you know, like, but someone had to buy that van new for me to even be able to buy it used. And so it's like, ultimately, we're so utterly fucked that I just don't know what the answer is. But I think that doing nothing does nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, at least I can do as much as I can.
Yeah.
And tell other people that they have choices too, and work together and share and inspire each other. Or else it's like, I mean, is fun even really fun when you know how destructive it is? Like, you could be like, fuck it, I'm a nihilist. I'm just going to keep going to Forever 21. Fuck the Chinese children that are slaves making this in a factory. And fuck the Indian people that are tanning this leather so that I can have these cheap ass shoes and poisoning their water. Or can you be like, I'm actually going to buy something at the thrift store and then I'm going to take care of it and I'm going to repair it until it completely and utterly falls apart. And then I'm still going to find somebody that might want it, you know, like, before I just throw it away. And so I think ultimately all of this is about, you know, what I was saying earlier about value. What are your values and what value do you get out of the things in your life?
Are you ready to connect deeper with your intuitive powers, feel confident in your decision making, and manifest your dream life and business with less stress and more flow? If you are a heck yes, I got something for you. The Moon Manifestor membership. Learn the algorithm of life. Find out what portals of opportunity are opening up for you each month, so you no longer have to second guess yourself and try to force things to happen, but you can playfully up-level your life while enjoying the journey. And just like Pamela, one of the Moon Manifestors, who says, the Moon Manifestors have influenced my life in every way. Honestly, my life has become so much less stressful and so much more in the flow. I love seeing amazing things manifest for each of us. So what are you waiting for? Join the Moon Manifestors and transform your life in a fun and magical way. For only $39 per month, it's like your spiritual gym membership. So go to hannahchristiansen.com and sign up for the Moon Manifestors. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you there. May you live your dream life with less stress and more flow, because you are worth it.
You know, what I was saying earlier about value. What are your values and what value do you get out of the things in your life? Because whatever you have now, you have it. Are you getting value out of it? Because if not, then you should let it go to someone who can. And if you are getting value out of it, then you should take care of it as long as you possibly can. I mean, I've had the same computer for 10 years and I bought it refurbished because I take care of it. And every couple of years I have a computer guy come over and like, you know, I got a new hard drive. I got new this and new that to keep it going. But I didn't have to buy a new computer yet. You know, like I'm really prolonging the life of this thing far beyond what is called perceived obsolescence, which is like planned obsolescence is phones and computers and cars and toasters and blow dryers. They are planning on this thing breaking. There's a certain lifespan that's built into the components so that they will break and you'll have to buy a new thing. It's how they stay in business. But perceived obsolescence is when you're like, I feel like this iPhone 4 is like not cool anymore, even though it works. So I perceive that it's no longer good and I'm going to get a new one. And I'm going to justify that because the culture tells me that I should get a new one and that people will like me if I have the new phone. And it's like, does that really make you happy?
Yeah, it's so much about the culture, just as you were speaking. And when you were saying about the car company that says, they don't want to give away these new cars because it would look bad for them and for their reputation. I feel that's so interesting, like that we live in a civilization that it looks bad when you give something away for free. Those should be actually the companies that should be praised the most, as seen as the highest, are the ones that say like, hey, I'm going to give away the things that I don't sell to the ones that are in need. If that's a restaurant, if that's a car company, if that's a clothing store, those should be the ones that we all say like, hey, let's support these people, let's support these stores. And the other stores that are like, I'm just going to throw away my stuff if no one buys it, those should be the ones where we become aware, ideally, everybody, and be like, okay, I'm not going to support those companies anymore. And I feel like that's how we can shift it, like on an individual basis, but then also on the company basis, like the big enterprises and the big organizations, when we become aware which one of these are doing the good things, just as you were saying with the restaurants, which one of these are going directly from the farmer, are taking organic, are sustainable in their way of working, and focusing on receiving our new things that we're allowing ourselves to receive, our 10/10 items from those kind of companies. And then they're usually also way better made. Like I see it here in Germany when my mom shows me things from her childhood, and I'm like, wow, this was so much better made than anything that we buy here now. And
well, but also Germans, I mean, they really know how to make high quality things. So that's a given.
And then my mom makes fun of him at times because he wants to repair everything, where my mom is like, just let it be. Like, it's just too much work. But he just loves to repair every single thing and repurpose and recycle. He has his whole basement is full of little, old electronics, like old TV, an old radio, like all this like stuff, and it's full and it's chaotic. My mom's like, you gotta clean this up, but my dad just loves it, and it's like his little paradise that he lives in. And so when something is broken, he just goes down into his little basement room and he finds the part for it. Like right now, like a thing was broken on the window, like a thing that goes down. I don't know the word for it in English right now, but it goes like down and like gives shades into the room. And it was broken, and my dad was trying to find a little piece that was broken, and he says, I could buy the full new engine. That's the only thing you can buy. You have to buy the full thing. You can't just buy little pieces of it. So he goes down into his basement and he looks around and he actually finds a piece like that, and he was able to build it in, and it's working again. And I just love that this happened today and we're having this episode, because that's what
that's what needs to be the cool, trendy thing.
Yes.
Repair. Number one, like I was saying, planned obsolescence, things are designed to break. But even still, they can be repaired. And it's a lot more work, and they make it hard. And they design things that are hard to take apart. They design things that are all built into one thing so that you can't replace just a piece of it. Because if you could fix things, well, why would you buy the new thing for $50 when you could buy the part for 50 cents?
Yeah.
So I am, of course, in huge support of anybody that is practicing repair and, collecting electronic things or whatever. Kind of like, they have like a car graveyard, not in the new car graveyard, but like used car pick and pull, where you can go and be like, oh, do you guys have this make and model? Cool. My taillight is broken. I don't want to buy a new taillight, but there's this abandoned car that you have, and the taillights, are still good. I'm going to go take that off and put it on my car. So any kind of thing that needs fixing, there should be a place that people can go to go get that thing repaired. And then we take all those things that would have gone in the landfill that are partially broken, and they all go in these places where we can take them apart and be like, oh, cool, this part is broken on this. Well, this part is not broken on this. So now we take two broken things and we have at least one, working thing. And so we're just so quick to throw things away because it's all based on convenience. And that's the real problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm really calling for people to confront. It's more convenient to drop everything off at Goodwill. It's a pain in the ass to keep posting things on the internet time and time again that I'm trying to sell, but no one's buying it. And I'm like, I will give it away, but I just want someone to have it. But that takes more energy. And so people just really need to just stop thinking that life is all about their convenience and start focusing on what is the best thing I could do? How would this be the most beneficial for other people beyond me, and stop focusing on just only themselves and what's good and easy for them, and start thinking more about the collective and how is this going to affect other people. Like, sure, I have my tank top, but who had to suffer for me to have my Forever 21 tank top? Do I feel okay about that? Do I feel fun and sexy in my slave labor outfit? Like, I hope not. And I hope that people can start to be clear about what their 10 out of 10 aesthetic is, and then be more responsible and respectful as they're finding those things, and then really taking care of them and repairing them and being grateful.
Oh my gosh. I just started having tears out of nowhere because it's like, this is hitting home so hard. And what has been building the last 10 minutes is me realizing this is such a call to awareness of our own inner work and addressing our own shadows. I come from huge shopping addiction, massive shopping addiction. And when you really start to, this is something we talk about on Sacred Sister podcast all the time, when you give yourself the time, the energy, the space to look at your shit, to look at yourself, the imbalances that you have, and say, why is it that I think that I feel better when I click purchase on an order? Especially, it's embarrassing to say, but I came from a past of ordering $200, $300 worth of stuff all the time from Urban Outfitters or whatever, and I would return 95% of it just because it was like this fix, this like dopamine rush that I was plastering over issues in my own life that I didn't want to look at. It's like, this is a big reason why so much of this is perpetuated, I think, given the comparison games that go on, and, I want to be trendy and I want to fit in. Really, it's like, when you source it all down, we just want connection with each other. We want to feel authentic in ourselves. It's like, when we can get real with ourselves and really question, like, why the fuck do I operate this way? And does it benefit myself and the world and the future that I want my children and my grandchildren to have? It's like hard to sit with, but these are some of the greatest gifts that we can literally have. I'm like shaking in my body right now because it's like one of those hard things that it sucks to realize. And I just went through my closet the other day and I felt so good about myself because 70% of the stuff in my closet is from thrift stores. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing a good job. I haven't bought shorts in 7 years. But then that makes me want to go buy brand new shorts from somewhere because I can't find ones that fit me really well. It's like that convenience piece that you just had hit me so fucking hard, because it is so much more convenient to just order 7 pairs of shorts from 5 different websites and see which ones fit you the best. But then it's like, it all comes with single-use plastic, and then the single-use plastic that the single-use plastic that's holding your jeans is fit into, and it's just not worth it in the end.
And the fossil fuel to deliver all those packages and then return all those packages.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where I really focus on for people to get started, is like, pick out your favorite things and ask yourself, what do I like about this stuff? How do I feel when I wear it? Why do I like it? Where did it come from? And then start to like just be more selective. And it does take a long time to find things that you want. And I hear what you're saying about like, the addiction to the purchase. Because it's like growing up for me, going to estate sales and all that stuff, it's like my mom was so addicted to that still. And then it was like we got internet and she had eBay and it was like fucking game over. Like the house is so full of stuff and, and I try and talk to her about it. And every time I go there, all that we do, every time I visit my family is work on decluttering their house.
Wow.
And she's always like, oh, wow, that was so great. And then a couple months later, she's like, oh, that room is full of crap again. And it's like, I see that and I just feel so bad for them because I know how overwhelming it is and it's emotional and it's like, it's all about your self-worth and what you worked for and what you have to show for yourself and like all this stuff. And it's like, but how much of it actually makes you happy? Because if you can't see it and you can't access it and you can't use it, then what are you doing with it? And so that's where I come back to this idea of minimalism. It's not about the way things look. It's about how much value you get out of the things that you actually have. Because if you're using everything and it's functional and you're taking care of it, then that's great. But most things that people have are not that. They're like holdover from a previous life, or they have so many emotions that people like don't want to face the emotions, as you're saying, that they just like can't get rid of it. But in the process of getting rid of your stuff, you have to face the emotions because you have to make that decision. Do I want to keep it or get rid of it? And then something that Marie Kondo talks about book and the show The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up is that as you hold each object in your hand when you're thinking about, whether or not to get rid of something, you look at it and you say, thank you for coming into my life. And if you want to say goodbye to it, you're just like, thank you for fulfilling that shopping addiction. Thank you for being a gift that someone gave me, even though it's not really my taste. I appreciate that someone gave me this gift. And like, or you know what, I used this thing for 5 years. It was great, but I'm ready to move on. I'm feeling a different energy now and I'm ready to let it go. And when you send things off with gratitude, it totally transforms the interaction that you have with it. Because you're not like, I feel bad for getting rid of it, or I'm stupid for buying this, or like, I'm a shitty person for even supporting this business. It's like, you know what? That was a moment. And now we're at this moment and it's time to go. And I wish you the best. And I hope that people could like break up with their partners in the same way. It's harder. More emotions with a person than with a sweater. But still, it's like just taking stock of the gratitude and then being like, and now what's the most responsible thing that I can do to make sure that somebody appreciates this? And you can only do your best. And ultimately, I'm sure there's a couple things I'm going to bring to the thrift store at the end of all this. But I'm doing my damnedest to not have to bring anything to the thrift store.
And I love that.
And
yeah, I love that about
it's work and it's not convenient.
Yeah. I love that you go the extra mile, that you take that on, because I've watched a lot of decluttering and minimalism videos because that's something that I've been interested in for the past months. And I see a lot that come in, okay, here's the trash bag. Let's just put anything in that we don't like. And I'm like, it's like everything in myself like just cringes at the thought. But then there are at the same time so many little pieces where I'm like, I don't even know what to do with them. Where to even put them?
Yeah.
And part of what I've been doing as when I was a kid, and now that I am back in my childhood room, I remember I have all these collages. I made all these art collages, and I used pieces that have like emotional attachment to them, but they were just like tiny little pieces, and they gave me some memory of something, but it wasn't something that I would want to have like outside standing anywhere. It didn't have any purpose, but I just put them all into the collage and I made this whole thing out of it, and now it's hanging in my room, like a bunch of them. And I was thinking like, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing with my home at home as well, because this is like one way of repurposing those little pieces so I don't have to throw them away. But is there like something else that you say? And I love that you did that trash temple where you put all the pieces in and you put all the stuff into the cushions. Like, is there like another idea for people that say, I have this like I don't know about you guys, but I have this like a random drawer where there's just like a random stuff, like always get into it, like little things that don't have a home. And what can we do with just little pieces that we know, okay, this is probably not something that someone else would value, and this would probably just end up in a landfill?
You mean like sentimental things, or like a pen cap that had like the pen is gone?
So both of them.
So for me, like I have a couple like plastic tubs that are like memorabilia, I call it. So there's like different eras. There's like high school and college, and there'll be like photo albums and journals, and there'll be like a little box, like a little shoe box or something, and that will be like the objects. So that'll be like pins and my favorite clothing and little pictures and little tchotchkes that were like important to me from that era that have a sentimental value, but there's like a size limit. It's like, okay, this is the amount of space that you get for like the books and the pictures and the blah, blah, blah. And then you get one box for memorabilia for this era of your life. And then it all goes in one big box. And that's not something that I need to open very often, but it's like every couple of years or every year or whatever, you open it up and you go through it and you're like, wow, all that stuff. And like, even though it doesn't get used often, it still is like adding value to me, and it's worth it to me to have these things because I just keep it as contained and packed up and organized as possible, so that when I do want to go through and have like a nostalgic moment with it, it's all right there and it all fits, and then it all goes back in there, and I can have that moment and not be like overwhelmed by the chaos. I can be like, yes, those moments of my life are there. And then every time you go through it, because of course memories fade and things change and, you know, you forget things. If you go through each time you go through and have your little walk down memory lane and something doesn't bring up anything for you and you're like, I don't even remember what this is. That's great. Time to let it go. If it's not giving you anything anymore, then you don't need to keep it, because you're not going to suddenly remember probably, oh yeah, that was the key to my first apartment. Like, no, like if you forgot, you're probably forgotten about it. And like, and that's okay. And then maybe over the years, you slowly get rid of more and more as time passes. And then 2 boxes could fit into 1 box because you slowly get rid of things. And so it's like the memorabilia stuff, everyone has some kind of like memorabilia stuff from the childhood and college and their years previous, you know, but it's like, how much space do you have to store that kind of stuff? And then you decide what the value is. Like I remember an ex-boyfriend, his mom had passed away and there was like a futon bed in his sister's basement. And he was like, but that was my mom's futon. I'm like, dude, no, but for real, you can't make your sister keep this futon. Like, I understand that you loved your mother and she passed away, but maybe you have like a picture or a t-shirt or like something else. Like, a futon bed is huge and you're not even using it. And like, so that's where I come back to this, like the value versus the amount of space and effort that it takes up. Is it worth it? And is there something else that could be like fulfilling that? And so going back, Britt, to what you were saying about the shopping addiction and like clicking purchase and all that, it's like, what is the value that you're getting out of that transaction? And like, is there another transaction that could bring you that joy, that rush, that is not fueling the negative capitalist enterprise? You know what I mean? Like, now maybe you could get a rush by giving things away and being like, wow, yes, every time I get rid of something, I know I'm helping somebody, and I don't have to look at that thing. I have more space in my closet to focus on the things that I do love.
I am calling in beautiful beings with a deep, burning, yearning desire to know themselves more fully, to feel fortified and faith-filled in the awareness that you came here with a purpose that only you can fulfill in your own unique way. For those who seek to cultivate their own resonant spiritual practices, I created the Sacred Self online course series just for you, to share intuitive tools that help one bloom from within. Doing deep self-study and introspection work has completely changed my life. I grew up in 18 different homes and 9 different schools across the Las Vegas Valley. I was intensely bullied and coped with moving a lot by morphing myself into whoever I thought other people wanted me to be. And it never, ever worked. I was anxious, a crippling perfectionist with a pretty severe identity crisis too. I know this isn't what your story is, but maybe some of you can see yourself in me. One of the most valuable things that I've learned in my 5 years of tireless, passionate self-study is that no one has the answers for me necessarily. That in order to transform, it's my job to prioritize the time that I need to sit with my gifts and my triggers, my stuff, myself. In the 3-part Sacred Self series, I guide you to create a sacred space for sitting in self-reflection. Invite in devotional gestures by creating a candle of presence, and gain self-awareness through self-study, utilizing Sacred Svadhyaya, a journaling practice. I had a client tell me recently, wow, I never really realized how much I glossed over the concept of self-acceptance. It's really like the most important thing. My sentiments exactly. When we can invite in the awareness that maybe, just maybe, our challenges have come as learning opportunities for us to grow wisdom and strength from, our lives begin to change, no matter the challenge, no matter the hardship. If this feels like a resonant step for you, I invite you to join me in the Sacred Self online course series. Use code SACREDSIS for 20% off when you purchase the 3-course bundle. Visit the online course tab on britlinleboeuf.com to enroll, and remember, you are the healer you've been looking for, but are you giving yourself the time and space to do those deep dives?
Maybe you could get a rush by giving things away and being like, wow, yes, every time I get rid of something, I know I'm helping somebody, and I don't have to look at that thing. I have more space in my closet to focus on the things that I do love. And so, you know what? And there's always going to be things that you get rid of that you later on are like, damn, I should have kept that. But you know what? That moment is going to pass 3 seconds later when you're like, well, glad I had it for a while and moving right along. So the way I feel about it, and people are like, oh my God, you're getting rid of everything. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, there's a lot more that you guys are not even seeing in these videos. But even in me getting rid of like 80%, I'm still just like, the times were great. Thank you for the times. And now it's time for someone else's time. And I'm not like over here being sad that I'm selling everything. I'm like, thank God I had all these fun times with all these fun things. And like, I'm going to remember that. And I have pictures of it. And like, I try and keep like one thing out of every box. I'm like, okay, cool. You sold 10 things. You get to keep one. That's your one memorabilia, kind of like thing. But you're not carrying the volume of all that stuff. So yeah. I don't know where to put the pen cap, though. The pen cap probably has to go in the landfill. I guess one thing you could do with all the like miscellaneous random things is look into creative reuse businesses. Just type in your city and then type in creative reuse. Not everyone has them, but in Austin, there's Austin Creative Reuse. In the Bay Area, there's Scrap in San Francisco, Urban Ore in the East Bay, and also the East Bay Creative Reuse, East Bay Depot for Creative Reuse. I know there's one in DC. They're all over the place. So just look up Creative Reuse Store, check it out, familiarize yourself with it. And then when you need art supplies or random miscellaneous things, maybe you go there instead of the craft store. And if you have things, you can take an inventory of like, okay, they accept these kind of random miscellaneous things. And then hopefully it will get used by someone. That's better than a thrift store. You always try the Creative Reuse Store before the thrift store.
I didn't even know about that. I'm over here taking a bunch of notes so that we have it in the description box for anyone that's like, what were they talking about? I didn't write it down. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, geez, the things that I'm learning in this episode are aplenty. They could fill a landfill. I'm really curious to hear more about the trash temple. I know that Hannah touched on it just a minute ago. I was just waiting on pins and needles to see what that looked like. And when you started showing us a couple weeks ago, I was just like, holy crow. Like me and my husband were sitting here like oogling over it because we follow Meow Wolf and their, events and different things that they put on. And it just was such a good fit, such a unique thing. And didn't you also collect those items for Trash Temple from like all over the world? People were sending you stuff to use in that installation?
I did utilize a lot of people going to these creative reuse places I was just talking about So I asked Meow Wolf, hey, this is a lot of stuff I need. Like, I need to talk about this on the internet. I can't do this without help. And so they made an exception, because usually projects are secret until they're finished. But they were like, okay, you can post about it and you can source materials. So I just made a list of all the things that I thought would be good art supplies, from like CDs to medical bottles and bottle caps and bread tabs and all these little things that you were talking about that end up in the drawer that you're like, what do I even do with this? And so I put out the list and I said, hey, this is the kind of stuff I'm trying to get. And then people would mail me packages, and sometimes I would pay them back for shipping if it was a lot, and sometimes they would just donate it. And sometimes, like, my friend went to the Austin Creative Reuse place and he bought all the bottle caps, because we were doing that big bottle cap mosaic floor, but that was like $58 worth of bottle caps. So then I like paid him to buy the thing, but he was coming to Mardi Gras and he brought it to me. So it was a huge, elaborate, many hours spent on DMs, like coordinating drop off and shipping and like trying to get back with people about stuff. And my mom and her garden club actually donated a lot. She had her friends in the garden club like saving me all the plastic lids and cell phones and remotes and just all kinds of stuff. And so basically we just made the show out of whatever we found or whatever we were donated. And so, you know, someone was like, do you want my MacBook Pro? And I was like, yes, take the hard drive out and like, let's do it. And so whatever we got, we made pieces of what we got. We had to submit a proposal and a sketch, and we said, this is what we want to do, but we didn't really know what it was going to be like, because we didn't know what we were going to find. And so between people sending stuff in, it was Mardi Gras time. So we had the parades. We could go get things on the ground from the parades in New Orleans. And just New Orleans is very trashy in literally every way that a place can be trashy. And so there was trash everywhere on the ground. Very easy to, it's very sad. I'm not proud of this by any means, but there's a lot of trash and it was very easy. That's why I chose to stay living there and build the show, because I was already living there and I was like, this is the trashiest place. Like, it will be much easier. And so, yeah, I just picked things up on my walks and bike rides, and we would go to the dumpster and get stuff. Like, people would text me and they'd be like, hey, good dumpster at this intersection, like, go check it out. And so we just did whatever we had to do to get things that people were going to throw away. And then that's what we made the show out of. And we had not that much more than we needed, especially like because the pandemic hit right in the middle of the project. We were like, we can't really be going into dumpsters now. Like, everything, you're not supposed to touch anything. So that did put a kink in the plan a little bit. We made it through. We were able to do it with what we had. And yeah, it was a lot of sorting, because every time someone would send me a bag, it was just like a bunch of random stuff. And then I had to sit there and like put it all into these piles. But then eventually you'd have a pile of something. And this is what I really want people to realize about that show. Number one, like, hey, consumerism is a problem and you're a participant and you need to check yourself. But number two is like, anything can be an art supply if you have enough of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so I want people to realize that things that we send to the landfill, not that I'm saying that like making art is like totally okay and like we're saving the world with art. It's like, no, because you know what's going to happen to that art show? It's going to go in the landfill. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like disillusioned in any way. And I make no claims that my art is like keeping things out of the landfill. It's not. Everything's going to go in the landfill, but at least it's like living on longer and like having more of a life than just like literally you drink the soda and you throw it in the landfill. Mm-hmm. So hopefully it can change some people's minds. But yeah, it was a labor of love. It was an insane amount of work. And I really hope that they open up and people can see it.
Wow. Yeah, and you posted a couple images on your Instagram of it, right?
Yes, there's images available. If you go to my Instagram, you can see the pictures from Trash Temple. And after the storage unit sale, I'm going to post more. I'm just like deep in my costume hole right now.
Totally.
And it looks really cool. I saw that video of yours and it looks so cool. And it's so sad that it does end up in the landfill then in the end, because I was about to ask you, where does it go? Maybe it can be just like part of the museum.
Well, no, it's a permanent installation. Like, it's going to be there. It's going to be there. But eventually, in the grand scheme of life, that business will go out of business. You know, I might be alive, I might be dead. Who knows what's going to happen in this world? But I did make the entire show able to be taken apart. So all the pieces are made so that you can unscrew them, and that they each come off as like individual pieces, and that those could get redistributed and like sold individually or like reinstalled or whatever. And there's barely any glue in the whole show. Only if something broke and like needed a little tiny repair that needed glue. But pretty much everything was nails and screws, because I was like, even the nails and screws could be reused after this show. Like, even if the whole show, they were like, okay, whatever, no one wants all this crap, no one wants the art, all the screws could be unscrewed and like put back into circulation and used for other stuff. And so thinking about the long term as well, it's like, okay, well, first of all the stuff is going to be in the landfill, so whatever I use or don't use, it doesn't really matter. There's no like waste. It already was waste. So it's like, if I had to throw some things out that I didn't use, that's okay. But a lot of it I did keep, and some of it I'm even going to post on my sale and be like, hey, if anyone wants these bottle caps, like, it's actually not that easy to get this many bottle caps. And like, if someone wants to use them, I have more than I need. I need a break from trash for a while. But yeah, just really thinking about, okay, I know this is going to end up in the landfill eventually, but what is the maximum use that I could get out of all these things and all the materials that I needed to attach it all together? Even thinking about that, you know, it's just about taking responsibility and thinking in the future, instead of just being like, I want what I want and why I want it now. Being like, okay, how can I achieve this thing and do it in the least shitty way possible?
Yes, it's all about like thinking long term and not thinking like, oh, I'm just going to throw it away and it's out of my sight and it's gone. But realizing, wow, it's never gone. Nothing is ever gone. It always stays.
Except for compost. Compost will turn back into soil, and then you can grow food in it.
True.
So the things that are toxic, there's no such thing as a way. There's one of the pieces in the show says that there's no such thing as a way, because I want people to realize, yeah, like when you throw something away, it's actually going to poison somebody's land. Someone's ancestral homeland is being toxified because you wanted a Pepsi. And I just want people to think about that and be like, is it worth it? Do I really need this Pepsi in a plastic bottle? Or should I like have my own water bottle that I refill and have for years and years? And ultimately it's going to go in the landfill. But this is one thing instead of like 5,000 things that will be in the landfill. So that's what I'm saying. There's no purity unless you're naked in a cave. And if you're naked in a cave, you know, you still got to eat, you still got to take a shit, you still got to have clothes. So to be alive, you're going to create waste, but that doesn't mean that you need to just be complicit in just like whatever capitalism says you're allowed to do. You have the agency and responsibility to be like, actually, no, I'm going to like put in effort because I care about the earth, because I care about myself, because I care about other people, to like make a more holistic choice that is based on the long term instead of on the immediate.
Yeah. Thank you for that piece. I love how much you've been really forthcoming, obviously, with like, yeah, I realize even this thing, it's going to go in the landfill later. And I just wonder, like, from your perspective, when you think 50 years, 100 years down the line, just like foreseeable generations to come, do you anticipate some sort of, you know, invention being made that's able to repurpose stuff from landfills? Or do you have sort of, I know a lot of people have very daunting feelings about the future and how terrifying things are going to be because our lands are so waste filled. I just kind of wanted to know your perspective on that.
I mean, I've seen all kinds of videos of like, this machine blows bubbles in the water and it brings the trash up to the top, you know? And it's like, yeah, we have no choice but to like invent things and figure things out. But I think that it's just going to be an ever increasing hellscape that we like perpetuate. But I don't think that that means that everything will be bad. It's like, we're already this deep. We've been doing this shit for like at least 100 years. And so if this much has accumulated in 100 years, imagine what's going to accumulate in 100 more years unless we make drastic changes. So for me, that's why I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I didn't create landfills. but I have participated in them, and I still participate in them because there are certain things that break. What are you going to do with it? And so it's like, all you can do is move forward. And all you can do is be like, okay, now that I know this, what am I going to do about it now? And how am I going to take the best care of the things I already have? And how can I support companies that are doing better things? How can I not buy stupid shit that I don't need because the internet tells me that to be hot, I need to have this thing? You know what I mean? Like, really get with yourself and get with the earth and be like, what do we need to do together? Because you are earth. The food you eat is earth. Everything, even your water bottle, it came from the earth. And so it's like, this is all so much bigger than us as individuals, but through changing culture, that changes minds, and hopefully that trickles and becomes more popular. I always say, just like, you know, gluten-free. 10 years ago, people were like, what the fuck is gluten-free? But now it's like, everyone's tried it, everyone does it, everyone totally knows what it is. That was a cultural shift.
Yeah.
And it took time, but now it's a thing. And so it's like, zero waste. People are like, what the fuck is that? It's like, okay, right. But you understand, like, more and more people are thinking about it as a concept, and they might try it out, and there's going to be certain things that are easier and harder for them. But it all like feeds into this bigger change that's happening. But it's such a large change that no one can tackle it themselves, but everyone can do something. And so just focus on the things that you can do, and then continue to always do more. And it's not that bad. People think it's going to be so horrible, but it's like, you get so much happier when you face the facts. Because it's like, you know that you have skeletons in your closet and that you don't want to look at them. But when you're just like, raw, I'm looking at it, and then you deal with it, then you're like, cool, I have an empty closet. I feel good about that. And so it's like, it's hard at first, but when you push through and you do it, it like only gets better, because you're able to like move with more integrity and awareness. And that's all you can do.
Totally. Wow. What an insightful episode. Thank you so much. I feel like just thinking about the audio bites that we're going to grab from this, I was like, well, pretty much every time she's opened her flipping mouth, it's been gold. So
here's a 1 hour clip of the
Yeah, it's been so inspiring. And I want to add to it too. There's this movie that comes up in my mind, and it's called Robots. It's a movie for kids, but it's literally about repurposing and recycling. And it's really cool because it's about these robots that are being trained, that they have to get these new pieces and being this new modern kind of robot. And then this other robot comes in and says, hey, we can just repurpose the old ones. And he's this rebel and revolutionary. And it's such a good movie. So for anyone who has kids or who is like down to like let out their inner child, Robots is the movie.
Yeah, I want to see it. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, I think it came out like, 10, 12 years ago or something? It's so good. It's so good. I think I watched it right whenever it came out. Thank you for that addition. So, Corinne, we have our Sacred Sister questions that we ask every guest. These are some shorter format questions. You could just answer with whatever comes to mind. So what does sacred mean to you?
Sacred means things that you value, that are important, and that are worth fighting for.
Yes. And who is a sacred sister to you, and what does it mean for you to have a sacred sister?
Well, I think on the topic of this episode, I'm going to name my sacred sister as Rochelle Brown, who is the reason that I got into zero waste and is just an amazing, inspiring person who lives here in Los Angeles. And she's sacred to me because she's shown up for me in so many ways and believed in me and my ideas. And through her believing in me, that's allowed me to believe in her. And I feel like we're always like supporting each other in our ideas and giving feedback and, you know, time and energy and resources as we can. And I'm just really grateful for her turning me on to all this stuff and for being the person that she is in the world. And, and I just really value her. And I'm giving her a bunch of my stuff in this storage unit purge because she's building a tiny house. And I was like, great, I have all this home good stuff. Now, like, you've taught me about zero waste and minimalism, and now I'm going to like give you these things that I don't need anymore so that you can have this amazing minimalist zero waste house, you know, for yourself. And so, yeah, I just think that being in relationship with people where there's a give and take and a respect, and you can support each other to do your wildest dreams.
Beautiful. And what are some ways that you make something normal or mundane into something magical or sacred? I feel like this episode was full of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like you just got to deal with the bullshit that makes you uncomfortable. But when you realize that it's just going to up-level your life, then it doesn't seem so mundane. Because people might be like, oh, God, getting rid of everything in your storage unit, that sounds like a pain in the ass. And I'm like, actually, it's like profoundly inspiring and just, it's a lot of work, but it's like, what is worth anything that didn't take a lot of work? You know, it's like, why is Trash Temple so great? Because it took a lot of work, and you can see that. And so for me, getting rid of all my stuff, it is mundane in a way. It's like, okay, find the stuff you don't want, take a picture, answer messages, package it up, go to the post office, like, you know, whatever. But I'm just like, but the deeper fulfillment that I get out of that, knowing that all these things that have been sitting dormant in my storage unit now are like presents, they're Christmas arriving at everybody's doorstep, and they're like bringing joy to their life. Like that alchemy of something that was neglected to something that is going to be cherished is that for me.
Totally. Yeah. I wanted to comment on that earlier because you mentioned about creating shifts in culture. And I feel like your audience members are that culture that you're building, this whole community that is becoming more aware and probably looking at their own lives so differently. And probably some of them are going to go on to start speaking on their own platforms about how inspired they are in X, Y, and Z way. And I'm just letting you know right now, there's a good probability that I'm going to go through my closet again and do something similar to your yard sale on Instagram.
Yeah, and I think that people should be doing Instagram yard sales. It's like, let's support the post office.
Yeah.
Everybone I know people have been buying packages on the internet because they're not going out. And so be like, hey, everybody, I'm about to do a yard sale. Does anyone have a bunch of extra boxes and packing material laying around? I'll trade you for it, or I'll come pick it up, or like, I'll take it off your hands or whatever. And so I've been trading people for packing material this whole time. And there, you know, sometimes I have to go to the post office and get priority boxes because I'm like, I'm completely out of boxes, but I'm waiting, and I'm taking it in phases. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to pile things up, and I'm going to wait for someone to bring me more envelopes. And then it's like, boom, they appear, and I'm able to like take something off someone's hands and give them something in return, and then not have to be getting new packaging because I'm reusing things. And so it's like, but you know what? That's more work. Posting on Instagram, coordinating, doing all that, Like, I could get priority boxes for free, all that I wanted at the post office. But I'm like, but that is wasteful, and it's more money to send things priority. Like, if I could be using upcycled packaging that's cheaper for people to pay shipping, and I'm not wasting new packaging, like, yeah, it is more work for me, but that I feel like is part of my duty because I accumulated all this stuff. And so it all comes back to like, what's the most ethical way? How can I do this in a way that's the least harmful to the earth, that's the most benefit to people? And so I highly encourage other people to do an Instagram garage sale. I just laid a blanket on the floor, and I just put a chair next to it and stand up and like take a picture from above, and I just tell people what it is. And so, you know, there's options out there. You don't have to go to the thrift store.
Totally.
Not that I'm saying don't give to the thrift store. I mean, I love the thrift store, but like last resort.
Yeah, and it gives people a chance to support you too, because they love the things. They love a lot of the handmade things that you've made. They want to support you, and it's just like win, 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 win.
Basically, yeah, it's great. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for it. So, well, yeah, and I'm grateful to you guys for having me on the show again. And like, this is perfect. It's going to come out soon, and I'll post it. And yeah, I think it is the time for people to get rid of their stuff. Everyone's moving, everyone's changing their careers and their goals and all that stuff. So it's like, let's get in alignment with all of our stuff. Let's get clear on what matters to us, because when things do reopen again, it's going to be a whole new world. And like, it's still a fucked up world. But if we can make it a little bit better, little by little, that's the only way that you get somewhere, is by crawling. And we have a very far way to go, but we got to start crawling.
Mm-hmm. And if people want to work with you, what do you offer?
Well, I have my online class on Patreon, which right now is available for any donation amount. After the quarantine thing happened, I was like, because I was charging $20 a month for the online class. And then I was like, you know what? Everyone is unemployed and they're home. Like, please do this. I care about people getting this information. And so you can sign up for as little as $2 a month and have access to all the lessons I've already done. And then in the fall, I'm going to be back doing more things on the Patreon thing. And I do like a live Q&A, and all the lessons are already there. It's like a go at your own pace thing. And then also, if I'm in a city where you are, and I travel a lot, so just, reach out if people are interested. I do offer like in-person one-on-one decluttering services. It's kind of hard to do over Skype because I'm in there like organizing and cleaning, and I'm like doing it, and I'm like your motivational coach kind of, it's like therapy for your stuff, but it's also therapy because you're going to cry and, it's going to be overwhelming, but I kind of like hold your hand and I organize it all and I strategize with you and I help coach you through these hard emotional decisions. And so, yeah, for that kind of like decluttering doula work, I call it, because it's like I am like helping birth a new version of yourself through this process of like decluttering and like facing your skeletons and la la la. So that I do offer in person for sliding scale. And yeah, I do workshops. If people want me to come speak, they can reach out, and I do in-person workshops. And all of that is very awkward now in this moment, but there's ways to do it. We got masks and we can figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We want to thank all of our listeners who are still tuning in here now at the end too. We hope that you have a great rest of your day, and we hope that you really enjoyed this episode and you're leaving here feeling inspired and having received new insights, and probably time to go journal and reflect on a lot of your own stuff, like I'm going to do later today.
Yes. Yeah, and journaling is a great place to start. You can literally start with the 5 and 5 exercise and like make a list on a page. What are my 5 things that I care about the most? What are the 5 things I'm happy to get rid of? And then and that's how I kind of work through this process too, is that I would just make up journal exercises and then fill in the blanks. But eventually I'll have a workbook zine that comes out with the online class that helps you through each room. But that's a whole other, I feel like I karmically needed to do the storage unit purge before I like work on the class again, because I'm like, I'm learning a lot. And now I can also help other people be like, hey, here's things you could do. You could do an Instagram sale. Here's how I did it. Like, you can do the same thing and see what happens. So sweet. Well, who knows? Maybe you'll have me back on again in the future. But until, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And yeah, all the links will be in the description of the different things I brought up, and you can check it out for yourself.
Thank you so much, Corinne. It's always such fun times to talk to you and to just receive all your wisdom and your authenticity with everything. I just love it. So down to earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.